So good morning. I invite you to enter into this sacred space with us this Sunday morning. There are several people here at the center with masks on. And as a dear friend who showed up today I hadn't seen in a long time reminded me that we need the Sangha. We need the community. And so whether you're here in person or whether you're out there in the virtual world, it's nice to come together in our hearts, to meet in that sacred place where we can breathe together and perhaps find some sanity in a world that seems chaotic at this particular time in history. And so when the world seems chaotic, I know that my challenge, my opportunity, and my responsibility is to find that peaceful place. It's right there at the core of beingness itself. One of my spiritual teachers said, go to the eye of the storm. Don't hang out in the circumference where the winds are blowing and everything seems to be chaotic and unmanageable, but rather pull to that connection place right there at the core of your being that by its very nature is still. The Quakers' whole spiritual teaching is about that still small voice. And when the Quakers meet in their very humble environments on Sunday mornings, they sit in silence and they listen for that still small voice, and then they share from that place. So let's use that metaphor, that example. What we're doing this Sunday morning is we're finding that still point. And we're learning to listen to it. I hear that simple chant that says, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know. And it is said that that still small voice doesn't get louder, but it does become clearer when we become still. I invite you to enter into the witness, the part of us that observes what is happening. It observes the thoughts that arise in our head without following them. It can just notice the thoughts. The witness observes the emotions that arise. And the witness doesn't make some emotion bad and some emotion good. It just says, there's this emotion arising. And instead of repressing it or denying it, we feel it very gently. Oh, there's some sadness. And once the sadness is met, the sadness just kind of falls away. And so as this witness self, we're learning that beautiful art of detached awareness, where we can detach from the chaos and yet not disengage. We're still engaged, but you are not hooked. We're not spiraling out of control through a reaction. But we're cultivating an ability to be responsive at this time in life when that's so necessary. And so when someone triggers something for us, we don't have to yell at them and tell them how wrong they are in a black and white world. Rather, we can move into the grayness of life. And I understand where you're coming from, perhaps. And in that simple willingness to understand their perspective, we are no longer suffering with our resistance to what is. This is a lifetime endeavor to learn how to be responsive in the moment rather than reactive. It's a lifetime journey to simply stop and be. So today we're taking the road home. A road that takes us into present moment awareness. I hear that beautiful chant of Gary Floyd called Behold, where he says, behold, the kingdom of God is within you. It's not a place you get into, someplace far away, but it's right there, right now, at the core of your being. And so this home that I'm referencing is the same. It is right there at the core of our being, waiting for us to arrive in the breath, in this holy instant of now. And we are admonished by Ram Dass and his spirit to be here now. As he evolved at the end of his life, his last book that he wrote was Be Love Now. And so by the efforting, and by stopping the seeking, we discover at the heart of hearts that we are love itself. So on this Sunday morning, the invitation is to rest as this love, a love that knows no other, and let ourselves witness what is arising from that loving place. And so when something arises that disturbs us, it is love that responds. In the Science of Mind, Dr. Ernest Holmes says, let love lead the way, and then the law will make the way possible. So this Sunday morning we meet in the heart of love, in the sacred heart of love, and I invite you to place your hands over your heart, to feel that connection that's always there in the sacred heart, in the spiritual heart. And throughout this month we'll be polishing the mirror of the heart, so that when we open our heart wide, we see things clearly, not from our distorted perspective, but we see them in the light of what they are and what they are showing us. So when you're ready to enter into the virtual world this Sunday morning, with your masks nicely in place, open your eyes, open your hands, and let me know that you're alive by wiggling your little tentacles. And I'm in the world of my octopus teachers. Anybody get a chance to see that wonderful Netflix documentary called My Octopus Teacher? There's a handful out there. That documentary changed my life, because it basically shows us that we're all interconnected. A member of the congregation is wearing a shirt that says, there's no such thing as other people's children's. And I love to say that they're all our children, but even the tentacled ones are our children. And when you see a love affair between a man who goes into this foreign territory of the ocean's waters, first of all wanting the intimacy with the water, so he didn't wear a wetsuit and the water was icy cold. And he said, after a while, my body ached for the cold. It's as if he was moving right into that vibrational field. Gigi would love this movie because he became one with the sea. And then the sea critters started coming to him. And he started having relationships, but they couldn't be human relationships because thought wasn't engaged. But there was a level of consciousness that was experienced that was so intimate that it made you think, maybe we've sold ourselves short by just wanting human relationships. What if we could have relationships with a silly ancient thing like a million-year-old species like an octopus? I'll never be able to eat calamari again after seeing that, I know that's for sure. So this Sunday, or this month of October, I'm going to explore the idea of polishing the mirror of the heart. I went on a little vacation with Trey, and this is the book that I brought with me on vacation, and it was one of the last works that Ram Dass wrote. He recently made his transition. And they say at the end of his life that he had become the love that he was seeking, that everything he saw with the eyes of love. Now, isn't that funny? It's Meister Eckhart that said, people come to me and they say, how shall I pray? What should I do? But he says, no one comes and asks me, how shall I be? So Ram Dass would say the same thing. He initially said, when he first came out, to be here now, to be fully present in the moment, to meet the moment. But then as he evolved and his heart opened, he says, then be the love that you are, that all there is love. Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind says that love sees only love, and only love sees love. So what if we could know our nature is love itself, and we would look at the world with loving eyes. So when you see all this chaos and this conflict and this hate and this dissension and this racism, how, David, can you see that with love? Because maybe this is what happens in order for love to awaken. Sometimes things have to get so dark before the light can shine through. I was a kid in the 50s when they had a guy named Joe McCarthy who was spreading fear like nobody's business. And I remember as a little boy watching this. And my dad, in his wisdom, said, Scotty, he said, sometimes things have to get really dark before people wake up. And it was a lovely senator from Maine. I can't remember her name. She stood up and said, this guy's full of you-know-what. And she stopped, I think, Margaret Chase Smith. And I thought, holy cow, someone said the emperor's got no clothes on, and it was the doorway to change. So what if these are times not unlike other times that we've lived in? And we had this beautiful Ruth Bader Ginsburg recently make her transition, and in watching tributes to her, they showed her as a young attorney standing before the Supreme Court, fighting for women's rights. And she quoted a woman in the 1800s who was speaking to this male-dominated world that we had at the time, where they believed women were chattel of husbands and they shouldn't be able to vote. And she said to the men, this woman in the 1860s, which Ruth Bader Ginsburg was reading in the court transcripts, she said, take your foot off our throat, she said. Now, does that seem reflective of where we are today? So what if the voice of the humble has to say, it's time for us to find our voice, to speak our truth, and especially around spiritual things, to speak for a greater sense of spirituality. So I wanted to give you a little taste of Ram Dass, since he recently made his transition in the Polishing the Mirror of the Heart book, which is a Sufi idea, by the way. And he talks about resting in this witness self. Now, if you've ever had one of my yoga classes, the first thing you do is you lie on your mat and you begin to observe your breath. You begin to observe your body. That very thing is showing you that you are the observer of what is. And when we can cultivate that, that is what he calls, what does he call it? That's the doorway to living from your spiritual heart. So he says the witness is actually another level of our own consciousness. The witness coexists alongside our normal consciousness as another layer of awareness, as the part of you that is waking up. So the witness is your awareness of your own thoughts, of your feelings, your emotions. It's witnessing is like waking up in the morning and then looking in the mirror and noticing yourself. Not judging or criticizing, but just neutrally observing the quality of what is it like here today to be awake. I have another day in paradise. Could I see it that way? Or am I going to get up on the wrong side of the bed and say, oh, it's a bad day, and maybe I should go back to bed and take it? No. That process of stepping back takes you out of being submerged in your experience and your thoughts and your sensory input. Rather, you're now in self-awareness. I'm not being yanked around by the aches and pains of my body, but rather I'm observing those aches and pains within my body and I'm sending light into them. So he says, along with that self-awareness comes a subtle joy. You know, it's joyful to know that life isn't yanking you around, that I can see when life has got its challenges and I can still be in joy around it. You know, when things happen. He says there's a subtle joy of just being here alive, enjoying being present in this moment, and eventually floating in that subjective awareness. The objects of awareness dissolve. And you will come into a spiritual self called the Atman. The Atman is the Hindu word for soul. And it's very interesting in the later works of Ernest Holmes called the Holmes Papers. He loves to quote Hinduism. He studied Sri Aurobindo, and one of his favorite quotes, Ernest Holmes, was the Atman and the Brahman are one. Brahman is the total creative power of the universe. You could say the big kahuna. And the Atman is the soul. So Atman and Brahman are one. So Ram Dass is saying the same thing. We come in contact with the Atman, which is pure consciousness, joy, compassion. It is the one itself. Now I would contend that that is what home is. Home is when we come home to our soul. And you know, I love that line. Even as a kid, when we were raised in this Christian denomination, they would say, what does it profit man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? And so even as a young kid, I said, the soul is the eternal aspect of who we are. And so what if we took our attention into that direction? He says the witness is our centering device. It's the way we get home. is through witnessing what is. You know? I can see clearly now the pain has gone. I can see all the obstacles that were in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. Because now it's going to be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's not about fighting the darkness and bringing the light, but it's rather about entering into the darkness and finding the light was right there in the darkness. Isn't that beautiful? When I go to the hospital and see Paul at the end, he wasn't fighting death, he was meeting it. With, here it comes, here it comes. Gigi read to me the beautiful eulogy of her sister that says, now I'm with the wind and I'm with the light and I'm with the stars. I was called by someone yesterday who had come to Paul Fulford's memorial service, and her husband died. She said, I know I'm not a member of your center, but would you be willing to do a service for my husband? And I said, well, I'd be honored, and so we're going to meet this week. I said, but you know he's still there, don't you? And I think she thought I was crazy by saying that. I said, because his soul is still with us. And I said, that's the kind of guy I am. If you want someone like that, then I'm your man. But if you want to identify only with the form is temporary. We all have one. And you know, when I did have the heart attack, the greatest gift it gave me was, it showed me how fragile all of us is, and we could go in an instant, in a heartbeat. And yet by still being here, it makes every moment so precious. You know, my little pug nearly died. He had a herniated disc in his neck, and he was paralyzed from the neck down. He didn't move for 3.5 days. And when he came back to life, I swear to God, it was like Jesus raising the dead. It's like, oh my God, he can walk again. And he's changed. He follows me everywhere. He wants to be held all the time. He slept with me last night right by my side, snoring loudly. Obviously, his passages have come back to normal because he can snore like a pug. So your first job, this is for you, Jake, is to work on yourself. And he says, the greatest thing you can do for another human being is to get your own house in order and to find your true spiritual heart. You know, some of us well-meaning souls, and when I was a brand new minister, I was telling everybody what they were doing wrong. I think I alienated every friend I ever had. I was trying to fix them. And, you know, some people don't want to be fixed. They need to wallow in their stuff as long as they need to wallow until they're tired of wallowing. So he says, the best work we can do for the planet is do the work on ourselves. That's why we come here. Because you know you're never done. I've been doing this for most of my life, and you only get to where you are in this moment. And I still have issues. I'm still human. I still have reactions. Isn't that great to know? But at least I'm aware of them, and I'm not acting out on them. So when anger arises, instead of being a crazy person and taking a gun and shooting people, oh, there's anger arising. Can I meet that anger? Can I love that little one who feels insecure? You know, anger is one of the lowest vibrations. Usually there's a pain that we have, and anger is easier to feel, rather than to go and feel the pain. So could we be willing to listen? Don't try to change patterns. Just notice them as they arrive. And as you cultivate this witness self, things start to change. I'm not that person that was so crazy and reactionary. I truly don't like reactionary ways of being. I can be responsive. There's still a reaction that arises, but I'm able to respond now. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to change other people. And when you're being here now, this is his phrase, in loving awareness, guess what happens? Things just change when you stop trying to change them. So by cultivating this witness consciousness, you move your identification from your ego to your soul. Now, if you're on the spiritual path, we have this relationship from ego and soul. The ego is the part of us that is our identity, that wants to be in control, that wants to have an agenda and a plan, and it seeks, and it prefers things. The soul lives in paradox. It lives in us-so. So could we make that subtle shift from ego into soul, and by the very nature of that, then we let go of the need to be in control. You know, we realize that the universe is in control. Could I surrender to that? It's a whole different way of being in the world. And we in the Western world have been taught to create a strong ego, which has goals and plans and, you know, all that good stuff that the ego has. Your soul is your spiritual heart, Ram Dass says. If you stay in this witness self, your soul witnesses your feelings and your desires, your experiences. It doesn't identify with those desires or attitudes or any of those things. And you can just watch the show. You know, it was the Buddha himself that says you don't learn from experience. He says you learn from your capacity to experience. There's a huge difference between the two. So what is our capacity to live in the soul versus our capacity to come from ego? I mean, we're all good, strong egos. We have a good, strong opinion, and we can move forward and have a goal and a plan and achieve all of that stuff. But how adept are you at living in this surrendered place called soul that accepts paradox, that sometimes I need the contraction in order to find the expansion? That would be the soul saying. The soul would say, everything is here for me. So the heart attack was here for me. The breakdown was here for me. The relationship breakup was there for me. It wasn't the universe punishing me. It was showing me that freedom was waiting all along, but I was bound in an idea that my ego had, that I had to make this look a certain way, and I was wrong. So it changes the whole operating system when you learn to live from soul. Lastly, he says, you can have a soul friend inside yourself, a guru, or a good spiritual friend to keep you oriented toward God. But the inner guru is always there for you once you recognize it. You know, the outer teacher takes you to the inner teacher. And this is what we have to find. When we were doing our class on Wednesday morning, everyone that spoke was speaking about the inner teacher, finding the inner guru. You know, what's right for you at this stage of life. And if you really listen and if you hear, well, then you will be guided from within. And that's the whole point that Ram Dass is saying, the guru within. The inner guru is always there once you recognize it. And you have to honor your own path and be able to trust that there is a place in you that knows what is best for you. And witnessing this is the doorway to your own liberation. So that's just at the very, very beginning of his book on polishing the mirror of the heart, to find that something that is waiting for all of us just by witnessing the moment and witnessing. So as you sit here in the audience, what are you observing about your experience or your capacity to be in this experience? Are you observing that you're open-hearted and you're able to adapt and not react? Sometimes the things I say can trigger things, you know. One of my favorite things is to say, you don't even exist. Well, that triggers things in people, right? Or that there's no good or bad, there's no right or wrong. That's all duplicitous thinking. Shakespeare says no good or bad, but thinking makes it so. In the Inca spirituality, they say there's not negative energy and positive energy. They say it's just energy. It's our label calling one negative and one positive that gets us caught up in duplicitous thinking. This is right, this is wrong. My friend Helen Street used to say, all the secrets of the Bible are revealed on the first page of the Bible. Oh, I love it when people say things like that. Once we started eating from the tree of judgment, this is good, this is bad, we could no longer be in paradise. Because the consciousness of Gan Eden, which is Eden, is the consciousness that it's all God, that it's all here for us. But once you start saying this is bad and this is good, well, then you can no longer be in the garden. You can no longer be in the consciousness. The garden represents the consciousness of wholeness. So when we talk about coming home, I always think of The Wizard of Oz and how we learned this as little kids. I must have watched that show 100 times. I could sing every song. I was dancing down that yellow brick road with Dorothy. And the irony of that beautiful myth, and it's the classic myth, it's the prodigal son. You have to leave your home, find yourself, and then you go home again. And the story with Dorothy is, as she comes to the very end of her journey, seeking, she gets to the place where everything falls apart. And the hot air balloon leaves, Toto jumps out, the wizard goes off into the hinterlands, she's down on the ground, picks up Toto, which is representing divine love. And then finally Glinda comes down and says, what have you learned? And Dorothy says, well, I learned to never look any further than my own backyard. Because if you can't find home there, you never really lost it to begin with. In other words, home is right now. She said, is that it? And Glinda says, that's it. And then she says, well, why didn't you tell me? Because you wouldn't believe me if I had. You have to make the discovery for yourself that home is right there. And then if you look deeper into that myth, the brains of the operation was the scarecrow. What was he looking for? Brains. The heart of the operation was the Tin Man. And he had a heart that was always breaking open. And once they started waking up, the group of them, he says, now I know I have a heart because my heart is breaking. And she says, stop crying or you're going to rust up again. Squeak, 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 as she's oiling him. So the very thing that you're looking for, Ernest Holmes said you're looking with. Now that's coming home to the truth of your being. Which leads me to that beautiful word, truth. When I started becoming a, quote, truth teacher, I looked at the etymology of truth. And truth comes from the Greek word, which means that which unhides itself. So the truth is there all along, and it unhides itself, like it did with Dorothy, when we're ready to hear it, and not a moment before. So what if the truth is that this divine presence has hidden itself within each one of us? And it wants to wake up. It's the Buddha consciousness. It's the Christ consciousness. And they all came as teachers pointing the way. And since then, as my teacher used to say, we worship their finger. It's not about the messenger. It's about this message that there is that which is within us. And if we acknowledge that which is within us, it will save us, as Jesus said in the Gospel of Thomas. If we do not acknowledge that which is within us, that which is within us will destroy us. Now, these are the logians, the sayings of the teacher, that the Christian community will not even listen to, and that's the juiciest stuff of Jesus' message. My favorite logian is the very first one of the Gospel of Thomas, and this is Jesus, reputedly. They're called the logians, the sayings of Jesus. The first one is, in all your seeking, he says, seek until you find. And he says, and when you find, you will be greatly disturbed. And when you are greatly disturbed, you will be filled with awe. And when you are filled with awe, you will have dominion over your world. Let those who have ears to hear, hear. So what does Jesus say? To me, he's saying, stop seeking and start finding. The first thing that happens when the presence awakens, the seeking stops. We're no longer looking to that guru, or to that teaching, or to that book, or to that idea, or to that philosophy, because that which we've been seeking is awakening. So he says, in all your seeking, seek until you find. And he says, and when you find, you'll be greatly disturbed. Why are you greatly disturbed? Because it was there all along. Like Dorothy, why didn't you tell me? Because you wouldn't have believed me. You have to find it. So you'll be greatly disturbed, and when you are greatly disturbed, you'll be filled with awe. Oh my God, you mean the power of the universe, the creative intelligence of the divine love itself is within me, ready to flower? Yes, that's right. And then you will have dominion over your world because you're caused to your own experience. You're not letting the outer dictate. And so when something happens, Jennifer, that's unpleasant, instead of letting that spiral you out of control, you anchor yourself in that truth that all is well, that life is here for me, and that this is just a road bump in the journey of my soul to go home, to claim that balance, that wholeness that is right there, right now, and it never went anywhere. I'm going to give you a little John O'Donohue. This was the posthumous work. I love it when they have posthumous works. He died in 2005, and this just came out a year ago. It's called Walking in Wonder. And I'm in love with John O'Donohue. He's a mystic that speaks from the soul. And he talks about things like there's presence in absence. You know, that kind of paradoxical language of the soul. Like even when Paul is absent, his presence is still there. So what if instead of thinking the presence only exists when we have the form, the presence exists even when the form isn't there? We did a shamanic journey in our Wednesday night satsang, and Gloryji took us down a misty path. And then she had us stand out in the middle of nature and, like the Sufis, put one hand down to the earth and one hand up to the universe and start spiraling counterclockwise as we felt ourselves dissolve from form into formlessness. And then she had us observe as formlessness, as spirit, what we were experiencing. And then we did this journey together. And then later at the end of the journey, we put our hands up and we started turning the other direction and we moved back into form. And you know, you don't have to go on a shamanic journey to know that you're a spiritual being having a human experience. But sometimes we so identify with this human thing that we forget that we're also this eternal soul that's waking up in time and space. So John O'Donohue, in his book, The Anamkara, which is his classic, the last part of the book is all about death. And he quotes Meister Eckhart, who's one of his great teachers, posthumously, I might add. And Meister Eckhart was asked, where do you go when you die? And Meister Eckhart says, you don't go anywhere. Where do you think you go? You're up somewhere in the clouds? He says, you're still here. You're just not in your body. So what if we could see with new eyes? And that's what we spoke about last week. And I'm going to give you a taste of how John O'Donohue sees this whole mysterious thing. He says, soul presence both suffuses us and is all around us. He says, we're not a body with a soul. We're a soul. And Emerson calls it the oversoul with the body. So we all share the same soul, the Atman, Brahman. That's our interconnectedness. There's only one here. So he's giving us that bigger picture. What Meister Eckhart calls the uncreated place within each one of us. This uncreated place within each one of us that longs to express, that longs to reveal, that longs to flower, that longs to express. So this uncreated space. If therefore you want to bring God alive within you, it is to that place that you must begin to journey. Hopefully that's what I do on a good Sunday, is to help bring us all into that place where we can just touch the divine. And one glimpse of the divine is better than seeing an angel, a host of angels. Because we say, oh my God, I'm filled with awe. It's right there. It's right at the core of my being. It's right at the core of your little girl's being. She knows it already. Now we go to Ram Dass, since we're using him as a reference point. He says we come here as nobody. And by that we also are everybody. But then he says, tragically, we go into somebody training. You have to be a somebody. Remember somebody training? There's a me. And then he says, at the end of your life, you're going back to being the nobody. Terry and I love to quote Emily Dickinson, who says, I'm nobody. In 4th grade, she heard this. Are you nobody too? How boring to be somebody. How public like a fraud to spend your livelong day on an admiring bog. So to know yourself as nobody, then you get to be everybody. So this is John O'Donohue. He says, both men and women can give birth to the divine within themselves. And you don't need to go anywhere to awaken this divine presence that we all share. Meister Eckhart tells us this is a coming home to our soul and to the house that you never left. It's coming home to your soul, to the house that you never left. I love playing with the soul. And I think you should read really good things. Every now and then I'll pull out my Ralph Waldo Emerson, especially his essay on the Oversoul, but they're all wonderful. And in the essay on the Oversoul, he talks about there's a stream whose source is hidden. And he said, and from whence it comes I know not, but when it comes, he said, I am a pensioner, I draw from that stream. So what if that's the soul that's accessing the divine love from the creative presence of the universe? But we have to have a capacity for that. So he goes on to say, coming home to your soul, to the house that never left. And I often think that the spiritual journey is about the conversion of the tiniest splinter of our own minds. Most of our mind already knows that we are eternal beings, but there's that one small splinter which is haunted by distance and exile, that feels that I'm not home, that I'm trapped in this human experience, that life sucks, and that da-da-da-da-da. There's that splinter that's been estranged from the truth of what we are. And he says, if we can bring that splinter home, we can be one in God again. And once again, we taste this God presence, and nothing else will ever satisfy us. Once you taste the God presence, nothing will satisfy you. So is that what you're wanting when you're here? He says, one of the beautiful things that Meister Eckhart said is letting things be as they are. And so many people wonder what they should do, how they should work, how they need to change things. But for Meister Eckhart, none of this mattered. He said the most important thing to focus on was how we are going to be in this world. Are we going to be an ambassador of peace? Are we going to be a creative part of possibility? Are we going to be a compassionate, nurturing place for when those children, that are all our children, come? Can we be the mother? That we're all the mother, whether you're man or woman, the mother who nurtures her children. We're also the father, the creative, powerful intelligence that guides us. It's all us. So Meister Eckhart asked the question, who are we going to be? And all intimacy, love, belonging, creativity is not when the grubby little hands of our functional minds get into the mystery. It's but when we stand back and let the mystery be. And then we become enveloped in it, so it extends us and deepens us. That we become the mystery. We rest in the mystery. I did a series here called The Way of Rest from a book by Jeff Foster. And I like the idea of resting. So once you arrive at the sacred heart of your being and you're home in that space, could you rest there? Could you rest as equanimity, that it's all here for me? Could you rest as not knowing? I don't have the answers. My mind thinks it has the answers, but I truly have no clue what the outcome will be. Could I rest in the wholeness of my being, knowing that, as Ernest Holmes said, it's when we perceive the wholeness of it all that healing arises? Could I rest in the peace that passes all understanding? I did an acronym yesterday for rest, and the R: relax, recognize, and remember. Relax, just take a deep breath, recognize that that presence is right there at the core of your being, and remember it. I am remembering who I am. Then the E, I said, is to embrace each experience with equanimity. That means I don't push the ones that are uncomfortable away, nor do I grasp at the ones that feel good, but they're all here for me. So embrace each experience with equanimity. When Humphrey had his herniated disc, it was the opportunity for my heart to open like it never had opened before. That most painful 3.5 days of my life were the most cherished times of nurturing a little helpless being who came back from that. The S, stop, surrender, and savor the sacred. I couldn't just do one letter, so I had to say, stop your efforting, stop the seeking, surrender to what is, savor the sacred, and everything is sacred. That's the S. You're liking this idea of rest, aren't you? And then the T is touch, taste, and treasure the truth that arises, that's already there, unhiding itself. Touch the truth, it's within you, it's not outside you. Taste the truth sets you free, so it must taste awfully delicious. Treasure the truth, because the truth is the enemy of the facts. The facts dictate that all life sucks, but the truth is that life is here for you. And when we trust in that life, and that life's wake-up calls, my friend Jake was saying, sometimes we need the guru to give us that wake-up slap, you know? And you know, life gives you that wake-up slap. Oh my God, I've been operating in less than skillful ways, and I need something to wake me up right now. Could I trust that life will give that to me? You know, we have coronavirus, we have COVID-19. It's not something we can take lightly, it's serious. I mean, really be serious about this stuff. When I go out in the world, I wear my mask, I am respectful. I don't defy science anymore. You know, I have family and friends that live out in California and Oregon. They say that the smoke is so bad that they can't breathe, they can't even go outside. You know, climate warming is a serious issue. You know, they talk about what's happening to the oceans and the up north and everything. And Canada is going to be the new Riviera. I told Trey, if things go really bad in America, I'll leave the country if he wants to. If things go to hell in a handbasket and there's a civil war. So I've made my declaration. But that's not going to happen because we're waking up to a greater sense of being, aren't we? Yes, everybody's nodding their head. And we're optimists here. We're hopeful. Lastly, I'm going to talk about waking up Jeff Foster, The Joy of True Meditation, that it is the I am that we all are. And this I am is everywhere. So once this I am that we are, and what was the name of God? And Moses said, what is thy name? He says, I am that I am. So if we are this amness of being, and the I is what makes it my part of the I am, and the I of you makes it your part, but the I am is all one. And so here's how Jeff Foster describes that place of home at the end of the book, and I found it so prophetic and poetic. This is the I am speaking. I am male, and I am female. I am east, and I am west. I am inside, and I am outside. I speak every language fluently. That means there are no shithole languages. I am all that is, and all that has been, and all that will ever be. I am now and never now. I cannot be reduced to any simple anything. I am breathing you now. Feel into that. This is your capacity. I am the in-breath, and I am the out-breath of you. I am every sacred, intimate breath of life. This is the creative presence. I am every one of your thoughts arising and dissolving into the vastness, and I am the vastness as well. I am every feeling that's surging like a comet through the universal body. I am sorrow, I am anger, I am fire, I am water. I am always here, whether I am recognized or not. I am the am, even when the I is not. It was Nisargadatta that said, the only thought that we should ever have is I am. And maybe Jeff would just say, am. I am the am, even when the I is not. I am nothing and I am everything. I am nobody and I am everybody. The story of I is always different. Yes, that is me and my creativity. But the am is always the same am. He did a big A-M, and then he did a big O-M. And this is my unchanging nature. Am, Om. And then I heard Dorothy saying, there's no place like Om. There's no place like Om. But that's my little playful child within, and I give him permission to every now and then say crazy things like that. So, Jeff says, do not seek me. Do not look for me in time. Do not be proud that you have found me. Oh, I found the I am, and I've got it already made. Yeah, look who thinks he's found the I am. I am not your trophy. I am not food for your hungry spiritual ego. Simply admit that I'm already here, and I've always been here. Admit that I have always been here. He just repeated my words, didn't he? He says, and live your life as a constant remembrance of me. I will never leave you or forsake you. Devote yourself to the joy of being me. All we are is God being God. You have to be so humble to say that. So God is dancing through me, and it's cursively writing through me, and it's typing through me, and God is playing through me, and God is gardening through me, God is cooking through me, right? And live your life as a constant remembrance of me, and devote your life to the joy of being me, and let your life be your love song to me, and let your actions and your words express me, and bring me into form. Could we really take that humble responsibility to express the divinity of what we are? Isn't that what you want for your 3 beautiful children? To let them express their divine nature? He says, I am your deepest wisdom, and I am closer to you than your most profound aloneness. When we feel alone, that's when we're all one. It's right there. You're never alone, even in your darkest times. He says, I have never abandoned you, and I will never abandon you. And I do not know abandonment at all. How could God abandon herself? She's everything. She's in the octopus. She's in Michael right now looking at me. She says, I will be here when you take your final breath because you are my beloved child. And I was there at your birth holding you. Do you remember me? So let's go back into that little remembrance as we close out this beautiful homecoming that we're all having. So this presence is courting all of us. It's the breath within the breath. And it's asking us to remember who we are. So I invite you into that place of remembrance. The Sufis say that we forget and then we remember. We forget the truth that we are this one life. And then we think we suffer because we see ourselves as separate and apart. And then we experience loneliness and we struggle perceiving ourselves as other. But when we realize there is no other, which is a simple remembering that there's only one life, and that life is Spirit's life. And Spirit is everywhere revealing herself. In the trees, in the octopus, in the butterfly, in the flowers, in the whales, in the ants, in the hummingbirds, in the human species, in the 4-legged species, in the winged ones, in the fishies, in the creepy crawlers. It's all the one life expressing its uniqueness, its beauty. And we witness it. We've discovered that we have a witness self that can take us away from the mind that wants to label and judge and keep us out of Eden. And once we stop judging and we witness the interconnectedness of all life, we experience a feeling that Thich Nhat Hanh described as inner beingness. We are the one life inner being in all creation. And we learn to rest in that, to recognize it, to remember it, to embrace the experiences of life with equanimity, that they're all here for us, every single experience, to surrender and to savor the sacred in everything, and then to touch and taste and treasure the truth as it arises from the depths of our being, the truth that all there is this one life, and we've come home to this one life, and now it can experience its depth, its beauty, its creativity through its creation, and we are that creation. And so maybe if we're a Barbara Rowlands, we knit beautiful baby blankets and baby booties, and we bring that love to the world in our creative way. Or if we're a Jake, we climb mountains and we ski down slopes and we do dives off diving boards in a beautiful creative way. Or if we're a mother of triplets, we set our children free to discover themselves by taking their journey into the wilderness so that they might find that love that would never leave them or forsake them. And maybe we're a mother of butterflies as one of our congregants, and we raise those little caterpillars until they break out of their cocoon, and then we set them free into the world, knowing that they have the consciousness to journey into their own destiny, and we don't have to micromanage. All from a willingness to rest in this place called home. I hear the song from The Wiz. When I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. And so we go to that place where there's love overflowing. and we observe who we are in that loving place. That we are here to offer our very beingness to the world. There's a sense of joy that arises when we know that we are a servant here to serve the one within ourselves and within the world. And so we make a commitment to be of service to this place called home, a place that will never leave us or forsake us, that awakens when it's ready to awaken, and we let down the walls of separateness, and we begin to merge in that field where there's only one here. In the Science of Mind, it says one, one, one. If we teach anything, we teach oneness. And we cannot know this one if we think other. And so when we know there's only one life, a sacred, precious life in this galaxy, in this universe, and we are that one life, something shifts. And we can say, I have arrived, I am home. And then the consequences of knowing that will be legion. We can't know. And then we rest in this not knowing. And we are free. So I invite you to place your hands over your heart and to this sacred place called home that we found in the Sacred Heart within ourselves. Let's join in the heart salutation by saying to this place within us and all around us, I honor you.
I honor you.
I respect you.
I respect you.
I love you.
I love you.
You are the deepest aspect of myself.
You are the deepest aspect of myself.
The beloved in me bows to the beloved in you.
The beloved in me bows to the beloved in you.
And in this place we are home.
And in this place we are home.
Open your eyes, open your hands. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for sending in your tithes and signing your checks. And just being here now. We'll get through this because love is leading the way. Master